On tonight's show, how is the global pandemic affecting sports at Eastern? We ask Eastern's athletic director Lori Runksmeyer and get reaction from sports anchor Jared Soltis. This tonight on ETV News.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Tyler Madden.
And I'm Julia Florence. Thank you so much for joining us. Sports, like many things, have been greatly impacted by the coronavirus.
That's right, Julia. There have been a lot of new rules and regulations passed by the NCAA over the last few weeks, including one that gives spring sport athletes another year of eligibility. So how does that, along with a number of other things, impact sports at Eastern? I recently sat down with Eastern Athletic Director Lori Runksmeyer to ask her about that and much more. Take a look. Lori, thank you for joining me.
Thanks for having me, Tyler.
So the question on everybody's mind is eligibility for these spring seniors who missed out on that season with the cancellation by the NCAA of all of their sports. Can you talk about how that applies to Eastern spring sport athletes?
Yeah, you can basically look at it as if a spring season never happened. So for the most obvious impact is going to be on the seniors if they decide to come back next year. What happens then will be decided on where the senior is in terms of graduating this spring. So if you're a senior athlete and you graduate this spring, you'd have to come back next year enrolled in either a second major or in grad school. So that's the first thing. If you're a senior and you don't graduate, then all the academic rules that you would have been under this year will be the same academic rules that you're under next year. I think the other thing to think about is it really is going to impact all the spring athletes in their careers because everybody got an extra year of eligibility. So obviously that extra year of eligibility comes with a cost. That's going to be something that student athletes and their parents are really going to have to discuss over the next few years to determine if they want to be here 5 years to play for. The other crazy thing that's happened to us in the last month is because the NCAA canceled March Madness, D3 is short about $8 million in the operating budget this year. That means that next year, they're going to try to get some of that money back by lessening the programming, maybe lessening some of the revenue that we get back when we participate in an NCAA championship or that kind of deal. So there's going to be some ongoing impact from everything that happened here at Eastern and nationally.
Can you talk to me a little bit about talking about that fifth year, the difference between coming back as a Division I athlete where you have those full scholarships versus having to come back at the Division III level where there are no athletic scholarships?
And I think that's going to be interesting both directions. Because the D1 or D2 athletes can come back, but if they get scholarship money, they're going to be either taking scholarship money from freshmen that were coming in, or the schools are going to have to come up with more money. And I don't know that the NCAA has landed with what they're going to do with scholarships, because right now there's scholarship limits for every sport. So if you have your seniors if they don't change those scholarship limits, and you have seniors taking up part of that, then there isn't any money to give to first year athletes. So that's one piece that's going to come into play at D1 and D2. For us, that could filter down. Maybe there's going to be D1 or D2 recruited athletes that now are looking for a place to play that might go D3. And it's also going to mean, quite honestly, we could have big rosters.
It seems like kind of like a domino effect. This one thing of giving these athletes the eligibility will then impact a number of things as we move forward. Can you talk to me about all of the spring sport coaches' reactions to not only their season, unfortunately being canceled, but all of these new NCAA regulations and rules that have been looked at?
So I think it's safe to say that the first short-term reaction in March was all the stages of grief for all of us. I mean, I think that first there was denial without a doubt, and I was in on that too. In fact, I said that week, there's no way the NCAA is going to cancel March Madness. But they ended up losing venues, and pretty quick it wasn't even a question. And we went through bargaining. There was, let's find some games in April when we come back to school, and that coming back to school isn't an option anymore. So I think they've been through all of that, but I have got to say that it has really been inspiring to me to see how much they care about their student athletes. They've been in touch with them. They're trying to set up fun workouts, fun WebEx meetings, fun competitions, staying in touch with their athletes about what they're doing to be grateful. Megan Krasno, our sports psychologist, has worked with some athletes to continue on mental health best practices. People have really pitched in to try to help everybody stay connected, even though it's an odd place to be in.
And I want to get to something you touched on a little bit there in your response about the March Madness tournament and how it seemed like there were all these things. First, it started with conference teams canceling conference matchups, and then you had the NCAA saying, oh, well, we'll play our March Madness tournament with no fans in attendance. That was something that was talked about. To then everything being canceled. What was it like to be in your shoes getting all of these daily updates, these massive, drastic changes?
It was so fast, Tyler. So we found out on Monday, March 9th, that we couldn't go on spring break. We were supposed to be leaving on spring break that Friday. And we just found out on Monday that we can't go. So that was tough. And I had a meeting with the spring athletes that Monday afternoon. Tuesday morning, I came into work, and our biggest concern then was whether or not we were going to let fans come to games, because Governor Lamont at that point had put on the 100 participant number. And that was Tuesday. By Thursday early evening, the NCAA had canceled March Madness, and we're in a whole different place. Spring championships are gone, everything. And that was in 4 days. It was surreal.
Can you talk to me about, you mentioned it before, the amount of money, how much money and how much of an impact those Division I tournaments have on Division III and Division II athletics?
So Division III gets all of its money from D1 men's basketball tournament, quite honestly, from the CBS TV contract. The NCAA has, as a whole, gets like 90% of their money off of that CBS contract. Luckily, they had insurance and they have reserves, but most of the NCAA money had already been spent for this year. That's why they're in the hole for the $8 million at D3. We get about $33 million a year at Division III, and most of that had already been spent on fall and winter championships, because 75% of that money at Division III goes right back into national championships. So I mean, you can see that the money was already gone and it wasn't coming in. So that makes for an interesting time.
Spring season, unfortunately, canceled. Now moving forward to the fall sports season, has there been any talk of any impact to the start of that? Because I know it starts a few weeks before everybody returns back to campus.
We've talked about it at the national level and at the conference level, just in a very rudimentary sense. What would we do? What changes could we make? I think that it's still far enough out that we're going to be able to get a handle on it in a lot better, more planned out way than we did with the spring sports. I mean, like I said, the spring sports all happened in 4 days. We should have a lot more notice about what's going to happen with fall. I have a national conference in June that's still on. So I think, we're taking everything a week or 2 weeks at a time to figure out what's up.
All of this moving so quickly, you said all of those developments in the 4 days, everything moving so quickly. What's your overall message to all of Eastern's athletes through this crazy time that nobody's really ever experienced before?
Well, I think the first thing I'd like to say to the seniors is I'm sorry this all happened to your senior year. I hope that it pays off in you finding your resiliency and finding ways through it. It's funny, I was talking to an athletic director who was an interim athletic director, and he's at the beginning of this, and he said, well, I guess I've got the interview question when they say, tell me about a challenging time that you went through. He's like, I've got that one nailed. and I kind of think our senior athletes might as well. And for all of our other athletes, I mean, we're going to get through this. We're going to find our way out the other side, and we're going to be able to continue to provide great experiences for our athletes. We just need to hang in and have each other's backs.
Well, Lori, we appreciate you taking the time to talk with us today. Again, Athletic Director at Eastern, Lori Runksmeyer. Lori, thanks again.
Have a good one, Tyler.
To break everything down, I recently spoke with ETV sports anchor Jared Soltis. Take a look. Jared, thanks for coming on.
Tyler, thanks for having me.
So you heard all Lori's reaction, the number of things that we talked about in that interview. What was your biggest takeaway, the biggest thing that stood out to you from our talk with her?
I mean, a couple things, Tyler. I mean, first we got to talk about the seniors. I mean, how it affected them in their senior season. Of course, a lot of seniors in this spring class. Of course, we talk about the softball team and all the seniors they have. They're coming back after a spectacular year, and that's just really the biggest thing. It hurts after going 3 years and then being so excited for your senior season and having to get that opportunity and then it being taken right away from under you. And it just hurts to see, because I know a lot of seniors and they're heartbroken by it, and I understand why. And of course it's going to be tough to deal with, but of course that eligibility issue too. I mean, she was talking about that and how much that's going to kind of affect things. And players, they're paying for 5 years, but they're only playing 4. So I mean, that's kind of an issue financially for a lot of things. And the money situation, I mean, she talked about it. I mean, this whole thing's a business, and the NCAA just kind of put themselves in a hole. Of course, they had no control over it, but it's just what ended up happening. And it seems like Division III might be a little bit affected by this whole money thing, and it's gonna be hard to see, because I think some of these sports seasons coming up and she talked about the long-term effect, and I think some of these sports seasons coming up are going to be greatly affected by the situation that has only lasted about a month or two so far. But I think come 3 or 4 years down the road from now, we're going to see it even impact the seasons coming up then.
In talking about that impact, I think the eligibility thing was huge. You touched on it. We talked with Lori about it. The idea of, we're talking about those seniors mostly, about the ones who didn't get to play at all, maybe coming back to that 5th year. But basically thinking about it as everybody gets a year of eligibility. Like the spring sports season didn't happen.
Yeah, I mean, it's gonna be tough. I think that we talk about freshmen coming in thinking they might be able to get time, and then there might be seniors there that are occupying those spots because they've got another year of eligibility. So I mean, that's going to be a whole other thing that the coaches have to deal with from a logistics standpoint. Talking to their freshmen coming in, and maybe talking to their seniors and saying, we got to still give the freshmen time. I mean, I know you guys have this senior season ahead of you, but these guys were already scheduled to come in earlier on. So that's going to be a thing that the coaches have to deal with, I think. And it's just going to make things more difficult. And down the road, I think these coaches are really going to have to adapt and adjust and see what they can't come up with in a tough situation.
Not only were the athletes excited to get this spring sports season going, but I know you all at ETV Sports were really getting excited to cover a lot of these big storylines. Can you talk about some of those storylines that you guys were looking at going into that spring season?
I mean, you got to talk about, of course, the softball team. I mean, what they were able to do in Texas last year. I mean, they went to the national championship. They finished 3rd in the country, had an absolutely unbelievable year, steamrolled their way right through the Little East Conference tournament, and then all the way to Tyler, Texas, hosted the Super Regional, won that at home, and then went out there to Texas and came up just short, but put together a terrific performance. And Coach Pepin and her squad were primed and ready to come back. A lot of returning players, a lot of juniors on that team from a year ago. They were ready to come back this year. And look at women's lacrosse, too. They were 1 win shy of tying their total wins total from a year ago. So they were looking to have a bounce-back season. Men's lacrosse also off to a 2-0 start. They were looking to have another rebound season. And also, maybe an underlying factor was men's baseball. Second year under head coach Brian Ham. Of course, we know what he's done. And then NESCAC, he's done a lot of great things. And I think under his second year, he was going to bring some of his recruits in and I think they were primed and ready to have themselves a pretty good year in the Little East Conference. So just a lot of things that were heartbreaking to see in regards to Eastern athletics.
So not only have the athletes had to put a pause on everything they're doing, but the people that cover the athletes are having to put a pause on everything you're doing, you guys at ETV Sports. What have you guys been doing to keep busy? I know you got one project in the works.
I mean, yeah, we've been trying to come up with as much content as possible. I've been kind of scavenging for things to come up with, but yeah, we're putting together a top 15 moments over the last 4 years here at Eastern. Of course, kind of a homage to the seniors here at Eastern Connecticut. Of course, nothing can make up for losing your senior season for those spring athletes, but we're trying to maybe just reminisce on the time that they've spent here and some of the greatest moments they've seen and maybe even participated in.
So kind of peeling the curtain back a little bit, going behind the scenes, I'm joining you from my house in my living room. You're at your house, and we're doing this interview here. Can you talk about some of the difficulty? I know all your footage, all your archive footage is at Eastern. Of course, the campus is closed. Nobody has access to that. The struggle with trying to put the content out without having all of your resources available.
I mean, it's very difficult, Tyler. I mean, as you know, you've been in there when I've been sifting through the dozens and dozens and dozens of files that we have on tap from the last couple of years. I mean, what we're doing now is we're just going through YouTube and we're just searching. We're just searching for YouTube highlights and Instagram highlights to try to pull off of, because we're trying to still make content for Eastern fans. I mean, there's kind of a void right now that people want filled, and spring sports season canceled. So we're just trying to make more content, and it's definitely hard, like you mentioned. I mean, I don't have all the content on hand to make things, and it just makes it difficult. And everyone here is working hard. All the ETV sports staff, Kyle Smith, Ryan Gable, Emily St. Lawrence, we're all trying to put stuff together as fast and quickly as we can, but it's definitely difficult in a time like this when we don't have all the resources that we're used to having.
Last question for Jared. Main point of the talk with Lori and with you today is just those seniors. Can you talk to me about what you feel the impact that these seniors left on Eastern athletics?
Yeah, I mean, if you look back historically, if we're talking numbers, I mean, the last 3 seasons, I believe, Eastern's won the Commissioner's Cup, and we were on pace to win a 4th straight. So in that time, those seniors have been a part of the Commissioner's Cup. So, I mean, possibly talking about one of the greatest classes athletically to ever to come through Eastern Connecticut. I mean, they've really left their mark. Of course, we know what the soccer team was able to do this past year. They won the regular season, did so a season ago too. I mean, women's basketball, 2 straight Little East Conference championships, men's basketball, a couple in this 4-year span. We talk about what softball was able to do last year. Men's lacrosse also had a couple of good seasons. So just some tough breaks for these seniors, and they've really meant a lot, and they've really left their mark on Eastern athletics, I think. And even though the spring sports season wasn't able to come to a close and get some closure on this season, I think what they were able to do is still going to be greatly remembered down the road here.
Well, Jared Soltis, we always appreciate your Eastern athletics knowledge and sharing that with us, and thank you for joining us today.
Tyler, thanks for having me, and I hope to be back in the fall covering Eastern athletics again. I know everyone enjoys watching all the teams out on the field and the court, so hope to be back covering it and put the headset back on once again for another great season.
Get back up in the press box, and we'll get back in the studio. I like that.
Yes, exactly. That's what we can only hope for. We're praying.
Yeah, Jared Soltis, thanks again.
Thank you.
To see those top plays Jarrett was mentioning, be sure to follow ETV Sports on Instagram at ECSU Athletics.
You know, Julie, it's been great over the last few days getting to scroll through my Instagram feed and getting to relive all of those historic moments in Eastern athletics history.
Yeah, they've been truly doing great work during this crazy time, despite not having any of their usual equipment and having to finish their season off campus. Speaking of being at home, though, everyone's been doing different things to occupy their free time between school and sports. Reporter Sammy Honeywell takes a look at some of the things that the ETV News crew has been doing to keep busy.
I think everyone can agree that staying at home is getting a little old, but we've all found different ways on how we can help pass the time. We asked the members of the ETV News crew what they've been doing to keep busy.
Lately, to keep myself busy, I've been doing a lot of yoga and meditation, and I've also been trying to get outside as much as possible to go for walks and runs when the weather's nice.
actually been catching up on a lot of reading since I've been home.
Catching up on movies and television shows that I haven't watched yet.
I'm watching a lot of TikTok, unfortunately, and I've started to watch that Tiger King thing.
Keeping up with my schoolwork. I've been calling my family, I've been calling close ones to make sure that everyone's doing well.
I've spent a lot of time in the driveway playing basketball with my brother.
I've been doing schoolwork to keep myself busy and be as productive as possible.
I'm actually still working as I provide supports for adults with disabilities in their homes. We've been doing a lot of fun crafts and taking long nature walks to pass the time.
Not only schoolwork, but doing things in my own free time like crossword puzzles, word searches, painting, drawing, basically anything so I'm not watching Netflix all day.
Trying to stay as physically active as I possibly can while also practicing social distancing.
Listening to older albums of bands that I've listened to and all of their older material to listen to their full discographies.
I've been watching documentaries to keep me busy and a whole bunch of educational videos.
Keeping up with friends and family, whether it's on the phone, FaceTime, or social media. I've been cooking a lot, baking desserts, or just making dinner for my family. And I have a job right now at a local restaurant as a delivery driver, so just to make some extra money while I'm home.
Helping my family cook suppers at night, doing projects around the house, like rearranging my room, and of course make sure that I get outside on the weekends to take my dog for hikes.
Working on music and getting a lot of exercise.
Just trying to get all my work done, making pictures and videos to post for ECSU athletics, and working on different stuff for the news, and just trying to find ways to not be bored out of my brain.
I've been going on lots of walks and FaceTiming my friends.
I'm trying to finish up all my schoolwork, along with doing a couple exercises to keep that blood flowing. I've also been spending a lot of time on Club Penguin, kind of reconnecting with my childhood, which has been a lot of fun.
Making TikToks and playing with my new puppy.
By drumming, enjoying every moment with my family, walking my dog, and doing a crap ton of homework.
I've been rewatching classic professional sports games. I've also rewatched Eastern athletic games as well.
By being creative, whether it be painting to writing poetry.
Playing video games and binge watching Netflix.
For me, I've been playing a lot of solitaire and Sudoku puzzles. For ETV News, I'm Sammy Honeywell. Stay safe, everyone.
Well, that's it for this week's edition of ETV News.
Be sure to tune in next week as Jarrett Soltis breaks down the top 3 plays from Eastern athletics over the past 4 years.
And we'll be back with more interviews from members of the Eastern community.
Once again, thank you so much for joining us. We hope that you continue to stay safe and healthy, and just keep remembering that we're all in this together. We'll see you next week, Eastern.